Are they all muted, the participants, or do I have to mute them?
They are all muted, so no worries.
Okay, I start now. So, hello everybody. We are still waiting a bit for more participants before we will start. So thank you for joining us. So hello, we are waiting some minutes more. So we will start in 2 minutes. So, hello everybody. My name is Shoshana. I'm one of the organizers of this event, and I work at Berlin Partner as an innovation manager with focus on blockchain, and I have the pleasure to host the session today. So I want to let you know that we will record the session and you can show up at the YouTube channel of BirdChain tomorrow. So I'm very happy to welcome you to the 4th day of our 5-day Blockchain in Use conference. So thank you for joining our session, Blockchain in Use with a focus on public administration. After last year's great success, we decided to organize the Blockchain in Use conference again this year together with our partner, BirdChain. So maybe you already know BirdChain is a non-profit association, and they are connecting and promoting Berlin as a blockchain capital, and they connect the blockchain ecosystem successfully. So Berlin Partner, the business and technology development agency of Berlin I'm working for, helps companies launch, innovate, expand, and secure their economic future in Berlin. So if you want to know more about Berlin Partner or BirdChain, feel free to contact me and my colleagues of BirdChain directly. So for our 2nd edition of the Blockchain Use Conference, we bring together builders and experts from various industries discussing the challenges and learnings from the implementation of blockchain technology in real use cases. So the next 1.5 hours, we will focus on blockchain in public administration and its challenges and opportunities for the digitization of the public sector. So let me now briefly describe our agenda and introduce our speaker now. So Stefania, would you change the slide for me, please?
I think it's already changed. Can you all see the agenda? No?
No.
Okay, that's weird. So I will probably have to... Can you see it? No. Like that? Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so let me just try to reshare.
So otherwise I will do it without the slide. I don't know.
Can you see it now?
I think so, huh?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So, yes, we will start with the introduction keynote of Michael. He's a research associate and scientific coordinator at the German Research Institute for Public Administration. Michael is a member of the expert panel of the European Blockchain Observatory and will give us an introduction into the possibilities of blockchain in the public sector. So, and after this, Matthias, the CTO at Ubirch, will give us in his presentation from Bavaria to Berlin, the EU vaccination certificate in Germany, an insight into the blockchain use case, as the title says, of vaccination certificates. So Matthias describes himself as big data scientist, hardware hacker, and crypto enthusiast. So he's responsible for the implementation of the German EU COVID certificate. The 2nd use case is presented by Tillmann Heiss. He is an innovation manager at the KfW Group. Tillmann will show us where the KfW Bank stands today and how it is in the process of developing a blockchain use case for its customers. So last but not least, Matti will present the blockchain use case, digital school reports with blockchain in Berlin. Matti is responsible for innovation management at the IT Service Center, ITDZ, of the state of Berlin. And after the presentations, we will go on with a Q&A session. So feel free to put your questions or to drop your questions in the Q&A function. This would be very well, and we will answer your questions at the end of the presentations. And then we will start with the panel discussion. So I will collect the questions of the participants during the presentation. So the round of speakers will be extended by Ms. Franziska Köhler. She is head of Dresden branch of the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees and is responsible for the blockchain use case regarding the asylum process. So Florian Glatz will moderate the panel. He is a lawyer, software developer, and policy advisor in the blockchain space since 2014. So he co-founded the Legal Tech Center and the German Blockchain Association, for which he serves as president. So thank you very much. And we will start now with Michael and with his keynote speech. So it's your turn, Michael. You have to unmute.
Yes, here I'm unmuted. I will just activate the chat so I see any questions. Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to speak here. And I've been speaking about blockchain in various occasions on academic purposes, more in the academic research side and political institutions and so on. And today I will just give a kind of subjective overview of where we are at the moment with blockchain in the public sector and how these two spheres might work or not work together well. And in my research for the past 5-6 years, I've seen that there's actually more things in common than you might think between the public administration and the blockchain ecosystem. I would describe just shortly, blockchain is a kind of endless paper in these old ways. So if you rip it off or if you try to manipulate it, it will become transparent. But it's very hard to kind of follow what's happening if a lot of people are using it and if the use cases become more complicated, and it's hard to tell who's actually in charge, and something that I call the blockchain pain can be the result of that. Similar is what my research is at the German Research Institute of Public Administration is how does a federal state work? How do you organize the commonwealth of a whole country? How can you administer 80 million people? And it's sometimes like this comic tells. It's like you see the people in the middle and they're saying, well, you want to play together, but we need to decide on which ball to choose. And the teachers in the door are asking, well, is it football? And the other says, no, it's federalism. So in Germany, we have talking about public administration and using technology in public administration, we always have challenges to say who is responsible. Is it the city level, the municipal level, the state level, or the federal level? And there's always disputes which make things more difficult. But also speaking from the blockchain perspective, there is many actors who don't trust each other personally and might rely on some technology to create trust instead of interhuman trust. So, and there's also, I start with things that I guess are in common is the German public administration, I mean, you all know that, has some special language to be used. I'm, as an administrative lawyer, often work as a translator more than a lawyer. Then I just explain people what is written in some public documents. But also, I think the crypto jargon is not that clear. Like it's many terms from like proof of stake, non-fungible tokens. These are words, if I would talk to lawyers or people from the administration about it, they would also understand not much. So there is a kind of jargon in both spheres. And it's just the starting point. The idea of creating truth and fairness or justice through distribution also can be seen in the state and in the blockchain technology. I like this example that I have is not for myself. is we have always printed what we consider facts into newspapers and distributed them all around. And if something is not disputed by the public, we consider it as true. So saying the Second World War has ended in 1945 is because it was written in many papers, distributed, and it was not able to be manipulated over time. And something similar is happening with blockchain, but also we have always solved our disputes in the separation of powers. So we have not said, okay, one person decides it all. This would be dictatorship. We want to do it in a federal and a separated power. And this has, we have the state level, we have courts, we have the executive branch, we have parliaments and so on. So also we distribute things to get to better solutions as a society. And also this idea of distribution and decentralization is shared by blockchain. Well, this is an interesting and very complex picture derived by the German Bundeskanzleramt or some person there who tries to give an overview of all the entities involved in digitalization of the public administration in Germany. And as you see, a lot of people are involved. And you could say, well, can't you make it a little less complex? But if we look at the blockchain sphere, I just want to, we will also see this, you know, this is the, for example, the Polkadot ecosystem, or like just some actors, also quite complex, and it's becoming more and more complex, and it's very hard to actually understand what's happening in the Polkadot ecosystem, what's happening in the Cosmos ecosystem, and all the others that I might not even know of at the moment, not being a technologist here or like working with the technology myself. So a lot of actors, a lot of complexity. This is again the structure of the public administration only of one state in Germany. So you have all these different ministries. You have Oberste Landesbehörde, Obere mit regionaler Zuständigkeit, all these different ones, the firefighters and the forestry and so on. So also many actors, many responsibilities, many duties, many things. And this is just the IT Planungsrat. It's like the central coordination area where all the states in the federal level and also a bit the municipal level are working together. Also, this is quite complex, how they work, how their processes are. But if you look again at the Polkadot governance system, is also complex. So what combines the public administration and the, say, blockchain ecosystems is actually that they're trying to solve very complex problems, and they try mostly to solve it in a holistic way, many of them, besides some of them just solving certain use cases, like cryptocurrency, of course, is just mostly the payment, but many in the blockchain sphere also have this holistic approach to solve complex structures, complex problems, and break it down to, in the blockchain sphere, to a very automatized way of solving the problem. And the public administration yet, or the old school part of it, is trying to do it through human interaction, human organization. So there's many things in common. It's just to start with, and you might think. But when people ask me, and I talk to people and they ask me, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a lawyer. I look at blockchain in the public administration. Many people react like this. They ask me, you know, why would the state use blockchain? And why this is so is mostly, you could ask, okay, is blockchain actually something a state should work with, or is it actually directed against state power? And some early voices, or still some voices in the blockchain sphere, would say, well, my goal is to get rid of bureaucracy and regulation. We don't need it because we can all implant it into code. Or we have like these people like from BitNation in an interview saying, the dream is to one day replace the nation state and get us rid of bureaucrats by solving everything on the blockchain. I just want to give, many of my research goes into detail here, but I just want to start with this. If we want, let's say, we want to get rid of bureaucrats and make all regulation based on blockchain, we should really think if it's possible and how it can be done. I'll start with this quote here. Once fully established, bureaucracy is among those social structures which are the hardest to destroy. And where administration has been completely bureaucratized, the resulting system of domination is practically indestructible. This is a quote by Max Weber, who died in 1920. So this is, he has basically built the fundamentals of how we organize public administration nowadays and analyzed it. And what here Anish from Stanford University says is we need to know more about the factors that explain the ecology of code-based governance structures. So it's a whole totally different mode of governance. We cannot just say, well, let's take the administration and transfer it to blockchain or something digital, but we need to see the differences. That's part of where I research, is trying to feel like the intersection of law and technology, and trying to translate as much between those two disciplines. Talking about public administration and blockchain, we will fortunately hear many of good use cases that are already out there. I just want to mention a few. Public registries have been discussed always. Maybe some of you listeners have tried to get an Anmeldung in Berlin to get your name into the public registry, civil registry. Not so easy sometimes to just get your address registered, as you know, especially it's maybe a quite big Berlin problem. But yes, maybe you can make that easier. Documentation, we will have the use case of certificates as well, also as other verifiable credentials. And of course, we can make transactions more transparent and processes more transparent and automated, which is, I think the BAMF example is a good example for. And then identity management. We had a whole day this week on SSI, self-sovereign identities. I think this is a very interesting use case also for the public administration. I will talk a little bit about it later as well, and many more, of course. So yes, so if you look at these big dreams of blockchain in the early times, 2015, 16, 17, you would say, okay, is it the one technology to rule them all? Is it the big thing? I would say, of course, no. This is not the technology that helps you solve everything, but I think it can turn out to be suitable. And it can be a basic element that we use, especially in a federated system like the European Union. We have the EU level, we have different member states. Then, as I showed, inside the member states, you have different state levels, and all of them need to interact. And many of them don't trust each other, and they don't want to just send all their data to another person. So it's kind of by default would make sense to use the idea of decentralized and DLT here. So because there's no fear of centralization, also concealment is less. You don't have to share all your data. You have the idea of zero knowledge proofs and so on. But still, we have a high degree of automatization, which is one of the big things about digital transformation, is to make things faster and more efficient. Otherwise, you could still do it all on paper file. And yes, we can adjust even the read and write permissions. And these are the big pros that can make it useful. And this is the constitutional lawyer in me talking, is we can actually achieve something which is, yeah, in the German Constitutional Court has come up within the 80s. It's called informationelle Selbstbestimmung, informational self-determination. It's the German term for privacy or data protection or protection of personal data. And taking the citizen at the center of the ecosystem would be possible, besides all these platform solutions, which are gathering and controlling our lives much more. So I want to use my last minutes for some actual development. If you talk about the book of blockchain, we are maybe at a very sad part of the story at the moment. I would call it, like, let's say it's chapter 17, Tears at the Bottom of the Valley of Despair, or the ID wallet disaster. In Germany, blockchain has not a good reputation at the moment. A lot of people are saying, what do you use blockchain anyways? We had the ID wallet. What's the background? There is a reform proposal of the European Commission concerning the eIDAS regulation, and in it you have the proposition to create a European digital identity wallet as part of every eID. So every ID you have has to have this identity wallet, basically being a place where you can store verified credentials or other data, like we see on this slide. And in this architecture here, one of the architectures they're working on, there is a public ledger. So one of the very important parts of it is public ledger. So you would say, okay, why are people saying blockchain is not suitable to be used? And here's something happening which I find interesting, and I also want to put into the discussion. I feel like there's now some people in the IT crowd who are actually doing what they would criticize mostly about public administration. And it's like, we have always done it that way. That's like the worst thing. You hear it always in public administration. Why would we change something? And they say, well, make it more digital, transform your processes, and it's very hard. And now the people are coming, talking about blockchain, also saying, well, why don't we do it the old way? We can, you know, why don't we just use a single server? Isn't that much better than having all these nodes? Or a private key infrastructure, it can solve the problem much cheaper. Why do you want blockchain? Or this hashtag 5 blockchains. There, we will hear about the vaccination. There was a big public debate, or in Twitter at least, and in some circles. Oh, why do you use it? And they say no, ISO standardization, DLT isn't safe. So we have the same discussion to say, some people say, well, let's use the traditional things, and there are some people who try to make the problem. So my solution would be, okay, blockchain is not a panacea. We can't solve everything with it, but it's a new possibility to solve certain technical and organizational problems better, differently, or for the first time. Might feel sometimes like your asterisks, and the others, or you are the ones saying the Romans are crazy, or the Romans tell you you are crazy. But I would hope that this will be the reaction of the blockchain crowd to all the people who are saying, let's leave it. And here I come to the end, and looking forward to the use cases and the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Please get in touch if there's anything I can help you with.
Hey, I thank you, Michael. This was a quite interesting introduction into this field. So I would like to announce now Matthias of Ubirch. So it's your turn. Would be great if you could share your screen now. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Matthias Jugel is my name. I'm the CTO of Ubirch, and I am mostly not known to anyone to you, but the product that we brought to Germany is probably something, or hopefully you have in your pocket already. It's the German vaccination certificate. You will ask yourself, why is this a blockchain use case? And I'm going to explain that in a minute. In the end, there's no blockchain involved, but you never know what's coming in the future. Okay, I think I have to switch to the other. Okay. I think it's not. Okay, so I will go a little side step to explain what Ubirch does, where we come from, and why the vaccination pass basically comes from a blockchain use case. As Ubirch, we always ask ourselves why, or if I get some data at any point in time from someone, where is it from? Who created this data? Is it authentic? Is it unmodified? And can I check it? So usually we work in industry-like environments. For example, you have a temperature sensor in the logistics area where you check that the temperature of your food is correct all the time. And the question is, how can you check that it has been the correct time for the whole process? And what we do is we usually put a crypto identity into sensors, help people install them in cars and trucks, or in industry areas or somewhere else. And then this nano client that we have basically takes the temperature readings and a timestamp and some identity stuff and creates little proofs. So it's a little proof that this temperature at this time has been generated. The data will flow through the normal data warehouse processes of whoever needs to work with it. And we take care to make these proofs immutable. And we use basically in the end a blockchain infrastructure to make this happen. So the blockchain for us is a tool that we use to create some public trust. So whatever ends up the trust anchor that is on the bottom side in the blockchain ensures that everything that we have stored on our side cannot be modified anymore and is not modifiable. And on the other side, if the data is received at some point in a factory, or a person needs to check it, they can then use these proofs of immutability to check that the data is right. So, and this is very similar to also what you see in the vaccination pass. Basically, you have someone who is authorized to issue vaccination passes, and at some point you need someone to check them, and you must make sure that it's authentic and unmodified and still valid. So from our nice IoT environment where we work with devices, and devices never ask questions, so you don't really have the problem with the blockchain. It's kind of crypto is no problem there. However, COVID came in the beginning of last year, and we had to decide what we do, and we thought that our technology could help. And there were also already coming up the first signs of fakes. And those fakes were mostly testers, because very early last year they started already testing people, and we did see it coming that test results would be faked. People would try to travel with faked documentation and stuff. And we tried to solve this problem together with a company that does tests in 5 big German airports, Centogene. They installed basically laboratories there and did these very sensitive PCR tests. And what we basically did, the same as I just explained, we gave them for each of the laboratories, they got a crypto identity that would basically sign and make these test results immutable. And on every document that you would receive from the laboratory that you could use to go traveling, there would be a little QR code. And if you scan this QR code, you end up on a page that tells you, okay, this is a valid test result. And we did also in-page a signature check, and also check that this certificate basically had been anchored in a blockchain at some point in time. And this time is very interesting and very important for test results, because test results usually only are valid for like 24 or 72 hours. So you need to have an exact timestamp to make sure that everything is all right. And a traveler could then go to the airport, make this test, fly to another country, and could show this documentation that everything is all right and they are allowed to travel. And from there on, in January 2021, it was kind of foreseeable that something like this for vaccinations would come up. And the person you see in this picture is Landrat Erwin Schneider, a very interesting and forward-looking person in Bavaria, in a very little part of the country. And he said, I want to have something like you did for the test results for vaccinations. And then we started implementing exactly the same thing that we did for the test results, also for vaccinations. The only difference here was that we didn't set up this in test centers, but in a vaccination center, where people would then type in with a web formula that they had put a vaccination event at this moment, and the person would also give their name and the birth date. And in the end, we would create a similar QR code that would be shown and could be checked later on. And basically, this was what got us the win in the pitch to the German Ministry of Health, where we then started in April to pitch, and started also working very quickly. Maybe you have followed this. And we worked for 3 months in very high workload. So the whole company was basically doing stuff 7 days a week. And basically in the June 10th, we finished, and the whole system was started. And up to now, we already issued over 140 million EU digital certificates. The only difference was that there was no real like for blockchain in the whole system. So we set up something that would basically only include PKI. But as PKI, so public key infrastructure, signatures, is a major part of the blockchain infrastructure anyway. It's basically everything before it goes into the block and also the technology that's used within these blocks. This wasn't a big issue for us, so we set it all up. We also offered to include some audit logging using blockchain technology. And at the moment, there is a big discussion about audit logging again because of the fake and illegal issuing of certificates and revocation, because that's a big thing EU-wide right now. So we will see maybe the blockchain sneaks back into the system, but it's nothing I can say for sure right now. So how is the whole thing now set up? Basically, it's a little bit like a remote signing infrastructure that we set up on the right side. The certification backend has an API, and we have onboarded basically all the vaccination centers, some of them directly using a certification web app that we developed ourselves. But since we are in a federal democracy, it's kind of hard to use a single service for everyone. So we had to also use integrators for maybe almost all of the individual states. So all the states had their own IT provider who would write software to provide to either doctors or pharmacies or some vaccination centers. And they would use basically be a proxy to our certification API. And finally, we also helped doctors' offices to get online and issue vaccination certificates through the telematic infrastructure, which is a very safe network for doctors' offices. And all this is backed by the EU trust list. So all the public keys of all countries, there are right now quite a number of countries, not just EU, in the trust list of the EU. And whoever is compatible with the EU vaccination certificate and has their public keys in the trust list can be checked within Europe and otherwise. And additionally, there's also a set of rules that is published by individual countries, which allow us to do additional checks like, is this vaccination still valid? Is there maybe something that was tried to revoke? It's not a good solution, but it is one. And this way we can issue very safe certificates all over Europe, and the German certificates are accepted in many places. What was missing from the whole thing, which is something that we do right now, is also the verification. Of course, you know, there is your wallet app that you can use to carry around your vaccination certificate. But there's also in place now an infrastructure to do machine verification. So, for example, if you go to a very large event where many people have to be checked, it's very cumbersome to use the CoughPass Check app, for example, to check all the certificates. And we provide services there so they can be integrated into turn gates and other places, ticket checking or ticket buying portals and stuff. So you can very simple and easily en masse check certificates, and also in a GDPR compliant way. Yeah, and finally, this is something, a little bit of a sneak peek, what's actually going on there. So as I just said, it's over 140 million German EU DCCs is issued. We onboarded about 45,000 points of certifications, doctors' offices, pharmacies, and other places. It's over 17,000 pharmacies, so it's basically every pharmacy in Germany is involved. At some point, we had over 400 vaccination centers and mobile vaccination teams. They were reduced over time, but now we see more again. We are also issuing certificates for the Corona Warn app for test centers. And this is also picking up a lot at the moment, and health authorities now come in place, especially for travelers from outside the EU. And the graph that you see down there is basically the start until now of vaccinations and recovery and test certificates issued. As you can see, in the beginning, we had a big backlog. So over 20 million certificates were issued in the first week. And this went down quite a bit and is picking up now, as you can see on the right side, because it seems a lot of people would like to have their booster certificate, and also a lot more people are getting digital test certificates. So as you can see, it's not really a blockchain use case from the beginning.
We have to watch a little bit at the clock, so we have to
I'm finished. I just wanted to say the last sentence. So we came from a blockchain use case, and I think it's still a very good use case. But in the end, you have to listen to your customer, and we set up something that works. And thank you very much for listening.
I thank you, Matthias. On point, so thank you very much. And now I'm very happy to announce Tillmann Heiss. Yes, now it's your turn.
Yes, I will share my screen, just a second.
Yes, I can see it. So, and if there are any questions, so don't hesitate to put it into the Q&A option or into the chat. So yeah, thank you, Tillmann. It's your use.
Yes, thanks, Shoshana. Thanks, Matthias. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tillmann Heiss. I work at KfW Bank, which is Germany's biggest promotional bank. And I will give you a glimpse on two cases where we used or implemented the blockchain, and it's called Back to the Future, because the first one took place already in, I think, 2017, 2018, and it's implemented in the running solution. And the other case we are looking into right now. And yeah, that's why it's called Back to the Future, because we already made some experiences in the past, and now we're trying to find a new use case or trying out blockchain. So let's travel to a developing country which is Ethiopia. We do promotional business there to develop in developing countries. And we aren't the only ones. In Ethiopia's case, we have over 80 money lenders that give money to Ethiopia so they can develop. But this kind of swamps the administration of Ethiopia, because each money lender has their own procedures, their own practices, you know, to reduce their own risks that the money is actually used for the projects themselves. So instead of channeling the money through Ethiopia's administration, every money lender has their own processes and gives the money only to constructors or consultants, which leads on the money lender side to a lot of effort that adds no value at all, a lot of communication. And in the case of the developing countries, it leaves their administrations swamped with many different processes, with a lot of communication to each money lender, but also they have no control over external financing, which can make up to 40% of the whole financing of the country. They have no overview, and this results in them not being able to plan their budgeting for the next years. So it's the perfect setup for a blockchain solution, which my colleagues, namely Jugel and Pete Kleffmann, together with Bearing Point in 2017, they took the chance and they created a digital blockchain platform, which is called True Budget, to solve these issues. And basically what this platform does is that it helps the process by bringing together all the entities on one platform and recording every step that each entity takes in the financing process. So whenever one of the players, I put some examples up here, takes whatever step in this process, it's automatically and permanently and also transparent for each entity documented on this platform, True Budget, which leads to much more trust, because since it's the blockchain nature, the documentation can't be tampered with. There's no information asymmetries. Everyone knows where the process, where they are in the process, who's doing the next step. And this actually led the money lenders to channel the funding through the administrations of the developing country, because their risk of the money being wrongfully used was reduced dramatically. And this gave the administrations the power to distribute and plan how they use the money for their projects. True Budget is a open source software which can be used for free. So if you scan the QR code in the upper right corner, you will find some more information about this solution, and it's been running since I think 2018. It was fully implemented. I believe many more countries are using this software right now, and it was a great success because it dramatically decreased the efforts on the moneylender side with no added value. While it actually gave the developing countries back control over their financing, and thus making the investments more sustainable. So having looked at this use case, last year, I think we went back to take a look at True Budget, because two things happened. For once, we saw developments in the financing market in Germany, where more blockchain technology was being used. And on the other side, the European Central Bank announced that they would introduce a digital euro. And at the beginning, they were oftentimes the words blockchain and DLT was used in the same phrase. So all banks were looking into blockchain, and we went back to look at True Budget and took a look at the German domestic market for the domestic market for promotional business, and tried to look at how we could use these experiences and this software to use it here. And we found out pretty quickly that the German domestic market looks very different to developing countries. Usually, well, in the financing and the channeling of money, there are no authorities involved. We channel our money through other banks or directly to the customer, especially when we use subsidies instead of loans. But authorities and administrations still play a major role when it comes to asking for a promotional loan or a subsidy, because you need to fulfill different criteria to be able to receive such a promotional loan or a subsidy. So we asked ourselves what's the best way to find out how to use some solutions that are based on blockchain for the German promotional market, and we decided against talking to our product experts and asking them, hey, do you have problems that we can solve with this software, which is called blockchain? Because that's a very that costs a lot of time and is usually not very fulfilling task. But we kind of pursued a guerrilla tactic where we said, hey, let's bring together people with a certain knowledge of blockchain, and let's try to find these fellow campaigners inside KfW and try out something new that is less oriented on processes and rather oriented on developing a platform and generating token and using wallets, so that we gain experience in this part or this aspect of crypto and blockchain. So what we did is we found about 30 colleagues that wanted to participate in a challenge where we tried to save CO2, and by telling these colleagues to use their bikes or walking instead of driving with their car. And they tracked their movement, and we created a platform and connected a wallet to it, and actually generated our own token, which we called Sustainable Development Goal Token, which had a fixed price of €1 per token. And we told them if they reach a certain goal after a couple of weeks, they would all get paid a certain amount of token. And well, at the end, when they got paid, they were able to trade these tokens and actually use them to donate them to projects that were sustainably friendly or social projects, because we wanted to gain more experience with the technology itself, with generating tokens, with burning token, and also wanted this community to learn to see how trading works, what a wallet is, and that's the platform we created. And we finished this challenge this summer, and realized that using a public blockchain, I think it was based on Ethereum, in a test network called Rinkeby, it's hard to connect it to sustainability, because this practice is still costs a lot of energy. But we gained experience concerning how to generate a token. At the end of the experiment, we could rule out that the business model itself, which is kind of the opposite of programs like Miles and More, where you actually produce a lot of CO2 by traveling by plane and still getting something in return. So the opposite of this is kind of a hard task or hard business model for a promotional bank, which is owned by the state of Germany. But we realized that in this process and in this research that there are actually a lot of use cases going on, kind of not really in the financing department, but rather in public and administration. And that's why we're here. I think Michael had perfect examples where we can benefit all the registries that Michael mentioned, and also the identity aspect of blockchain and authenticity use cases for blockchain. That's where a promotional bank can benefit from. And I think Matti will show us something that's very connected to what KfW is expecting to kind of gain from experimenting with the blockchain.
So, thank you, Tillmann. I think it was the end, huh?
Yes.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy that you find there's some connections to the other speakers. So it will become more intense at the panel discussion. But now Matti will present the third use case. Yeah, it's you. Now it's your stage.
Yeah, thanks for Shoshana, and of course, thanks for having me. So I hope you can hear me properly and you can see my slides. Okay, great. So my name is Matti Große, and I would like to talk to you today about digital school reports. But before that, I'd like to give you a few quick facts about ITDZ Berlin. So the company where I've been working as an innovation manager now for almost 2.5 years. ITDZ is a central IT service provider for the Berlin administration. And our key priorities, guiding our long-term vision, but also framing our daily business, are digitalization, standardization, and IT security. We support around 100,000 employees in the Senate and district administrations here in Berlin, also the police and fire departments, and so on and so forth. And we support them in their work for, at the end, as the citizens of Berlin. Currently, our biggest task is certainly the implementation of the e-government act here in Berlin for the state of Berlin. But back to blockchain. Almost 2 years ago, we asked ourselves if the blockchain hype could be translated into, let's say, real-world tangible applications that might be useful for the administrative context. And yes, we quickly noticed that many properties of distributed ledger technologies are equally requirements for administrative tasks and actions in the digital world. So for example, in integrity, traceability, reliability, of course, effectiveness and efficiency, but also sovereignty. These are all properties that we have always demanded of administration. So, and it is therefore all the more important that we also guarantee those requirements in the digital world. And the blockchain technologies, from our perspective, can help us here to realize many processes also in the digital space. So let's now look at school reports. The digitization of school reports using blockchain technology represents maybe the central pilot application of the technologies in the state of Berlin. The successful realization here is the collaborative activity between various actors, and I'm really happy that we have this kind of joint forces here, such as the Senate Department of Education, Senate Department of Economics, ourselves, but also Berlin partner, to join forces at this point, and we also do that together with the Bundesblock, which developed the application of our solution, and also the Gov Digital is involved as the operator of the blockchain infrastructure. But what is exactly the problem with traditional school certificates? Application processes often require complex authentication processes. We all know that we often suffer quality losses due to scanning and uploading those documents to portals. Sometimes it seems easy to manipulate, so that authenticity is difficult to trace. And all in all, non-digital reports are simply not up to date anymore, I would say. So I think here's something to do, and we did something, and this was the digitization of school reports. And what does it mean? We will, starting next week, we will have like standardized school reports here in Berlin. And also metadata can be processed without any media disruption to, for example, applicant management systems, so to say. Yeah, and in addition, the use of the blockchain technologies makes it possible to verify the authenticity of the reports and also the issuing authorities like the schools at the end. Maybe we have a closer look at the process, so in more detail. Yeah, on the left top side, we have the issuing authority like the school, and here those authorized schools, they generate those digital school reports, and they write the associated hash codes and the signatures of the schools into the blockchain. So no personal data, of course, is stored into the blockchain. It's just the hash codes and the digital signature. Yeah, then of course the digital school reports are handed along the physical school reports to the students in the process, of course, and those students then can use the digital reports, yeah, of course, for job applications at universities or at enterprises, and of course at the public sector. And yeah, and finally, those companies or universities, they can check the authenticity by querying the hash value and process the metadata in the application process without any media disruption. And all of this takes place on a trusted infrastructure. So this is pretty important at the end, that we have this kind of blockchains run by the Digital as a yeah, connection of public sector IT service providers. The advantages are pretty obvious, I would say. So we have the verification of origin and the integrity over lifetime here to a certain degree guaranteed in this process. Yeah, of course, the filing and archiving of physical reports is eliminated. Media disruption is avoided, and yeah, of course, the application processes then are much more efficient. And of course, we have a GDPR compliant solution here in action. So that of course is also guaranteed. Yeah, perhaps why are we doing this? Well, we are not using new technologies as an end in itself. Rather, we want to harmonize kind of the requirements of administrative processes in the digital world with a useful, innovative technology. And the goal that we have in mind at the end is, of course, an innovative service for the citizens or user-friendly service at the end. And then this is why we all do this. And blockchain in this regard is only like the basic infrastructure that we are using, but it's maybe not so much important for the end user. Yeah. Coming to an end, what are the next milestones? We are currently running the user test, including all the pilot schools here in Berlin. At the beginning of next year, we then have the operating test to be mastered successfully. Yeah, before we then can hopefully issue the first certificates in Berlin next summer to the students here. And yeah, however, we will not stop our work, of course, with the successful completion of the project. Next year, we also want to dedicate the innovation management to the topic of SSI solutions. One is to discuss how we advance digital school reports further. So, for example, as a credential in the long term, and bring it to the hands of the student as a SSI credential. But before that, though, we are going to look at how we might digitize the student ID card, which is still a process in which the card is issued as a paper card with a photo and a school stamp pasted into it. So as we all know it from like 20-30 years ago. And yeah, we want to draw on the SSI idea here also in this context, and it will be most certainly as a part of the ID Union consortium. So also again joining forces with well-known actors in this context. Yeah, looking forward to next year. And having said that, yeah, thanks for listening and looking forward to questions or the discussion now.
Thank you, Matti, for this great presentation. Perfect. So I would like to hand over to Florian now for the Q&A and the panel discussion. So yeah, thank you, Florian.
Thank you so much. Happy to be moderating this panel of amazing experts today. I would actually like to start with Franziska. So just a quick recap, there have been no questions asked in the Q&A on any of the speakers. The idea was to ask the audience questions now. Since there are no audience questions, I will get back to all the speakers in a moment with some questions that I have prepared or that came up while I was watching the presentations. But before we get to the speakers, I would actually love to talk with Franziska, who also has a use case at the BAMF, which she, I think, could describe to us quickly, and then answer maybe 1 or 2 questions about it. Franziska, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here and to present you our project, FLORA. FLORA stands for Federal Blockchain Infrastructure Asylum, and this is the blockchain project of Federal Office for Migrations and Refugees. Now I would like to give you a few brief insights into our project. Let's look at the problems we have had in the past and which we have solved with our blockchain-based solution. At first, asylum management in Germany is a decentralized system of responsibilities. I mean, the asylum procedure is standardized, but there are local variations because there are different organizations and authorities on all federal levels, and all they are involved in the asylum procedure, and all they have to work together. We heard about this aspect today in the introduction also, but how they work together. There are various shared IT solutions for providing or transmitting information, but just such information like about a process, about specific process steps, or about appointment clarification was often exchanged between participants via paper lists or Excel lists or emails and so on. For example, in Dresden, we have a closely interlinked process between the Foreign Office and the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees. And in the past, we exchanged 6 various lists with process information every day, 6 lists every day. And we had to manage this list. I think you can imagine this meant a high manual coordination effort. Okay, and now the big question, how could the technology help us? We share, in our blockchain solution, we share process data, and we coordinate the asylum process between public offices via a blockchain solution. We use this technology like a shared notebook. If one partner finished a process step for an asylum seeker, for example, the registration, then this office writes this information in the notebook. It means on the blockchain. If another partner finished a process step for an asylum seeker, for example, the application, then the next information is written in this notebook. And so every participant writes his process steps in the notebook on the blockchain. And the information is shared in the blockchain network with all participants. And every participant can read the process steps and continue its own process. And in this way, we have a single source of tools for all this process information. Our goals in the process were, first of all, the big business goal. We want to coordinate all the interlinked process between the Foreign Office in Dresden and us with this IT solution. We wanted to design and implement a data protection compliant solution, and we wanted to prove that blockchain can be used sensibly in public administration. We went live with our solution in April this year, and now we almost finished the evaluation. And in the result, we achieved all goals, and now we are planning the next step to roll out the solution. That's a short introduction to our project.
Thank you so much, Franziska. That's very exciting. just to follow up on that, maybe you could answer me both. What was the main challenge in getting there where you are, and what do you think is the main benefit of your solution?
One of the big challenge was, of course, the topic data protection, and the first aspect, who can see the information, but it's not such a big problem. We use a private blockchain with only authorities as participants, and only with authorities involved in the asylum procedure. But there's another aspect of data protection. One of the properties of the blockchain is that you cannot delete transactions. This sounds like a huge problem for data protection, right? But we were in close contact with the Federal Commissioner for Data Protection and Freedom of Information all this time, and they gave us hints and recommendations, and we discussed the solution, and finally we got the permission and could go live. And the key is we separate the personal data from the process data, and on the blockchain we save only process data. Yes.
Understood. That's very cool. Thank you. Okay. Yes, the main benefit would be the remaining question. Thank you.
Yeah, the main benefit is for Dresden, we have replaced all these Excel lists and paper lists. We coordinate all standard cases about this with this solution, and the data quality is higher. The information, we get the information faster and easier, and the whole procedure takes less time. The worker satisfaction is high, and they don't want to go back to the old system.
That is a good sign. Okay, thank you. My next question actually goes to Matthias, who has been telling us about their use case, and obviously it started as a potential blockchain use case, didn't end up being one. Still, can you tell us what do you think needs to change in Germany for something like this to actually be a viable use case for, you know, public blockchains as a kind of a trust layer? Is it a mere perception problem, or is there like technical, legal, or other kinds of hurdles that are a problem there at the moment?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture of communication and perception. So on one side, we should not always try to communicate blockchain as the solution for everything. Rather explain why blockchain can be a good solution for certain aspects in public administration, for example. And this will then in turn help making blockchain use cases possible. So mostly, I think it's I wouldn't say fear, but it's the difficulty to understand, because blockchains are complex. They are a lot of math. There is cryptography involved. This makes it hard to understand in many cases. And I very often see a lack of good explanations how blockchain works and what they actually solve.
Thank you. That is a great answer. Just to follow up on this, is there a difference for you between public blockchains and private blockchains, such as Franziska is using in the Flora use case?
Yes, there is, but this depends on the use case. So there are use cases where you would like to have like a public scrutiny. So you would like to be able to, for example, every citizen to check that everything is all right. And then on the other hand, like in the use case we've just heard about, it's more about creating a common ground between different entities that have to work together. There you basically have the math in the background to ensure that it's very hard to not make mistakes, but to change things that go undetected. And if you distribute the process data in ways like this, you can have a distributed system with all the integrity checks, the security, and you don't really have to trust that the data you copy to another entity in the whole process does the right things with this, because it's basically limited to what it's allowed to use and how it can use it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that way, it's basically, so you decide on whether you would like to have a permissioned or private blockchain, depending on the use case. If you really need the public to check that everything is all right, it should be public, or you should have anchors in a public blockchain. If you have something where you basically need to align different administrations, then a private or a permission blockchain would probably be okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just want to circle back quickly to Franziska, because there was an audience question, which is how hard or easy was it to integrate with other administrative systems, essentially legacy systems that are running alongside this and which somehow need to talk to your blockchain application? Could you say something on that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's a good question. That was also a challenge to bring the systems together. With other authorities, it is, I can't explain it really good because I'm not the technical person in the project. I know it was very challenging to get connected with the state Saxony and to work together with our own administrative system. It was not really easy, but it works.
Maybe to add on that, if I
please.
may.
Perfect. Yes.
So I think the blockchain, or this, like the blockchain infrastructure, actually help us to overcome this kind of to overcome the problem of different system and different applications, because at the end we write into the blockchain from different, like say the application layer. So we are using like a system in the school context here in Berlin, and in other countries they are using different systems, and at the end we use the blockchain as a common room to store the data and to write down the hash codes, and this actually maybe to a certain degree helps us to overcome this problem of different systems, and maybe helps us to interoperate between different actors and institutions.
That is great input. Thank you very much. Yeah, that is, I think, a good argument. My next question would go to Tillmann and his use case. And the question is also an audience question, is what was the biggest challenge in convincing all the stakeholders that you were able to bring on board to your project?
Yeah, thanks. I saw the question. It came from Lisa. Just to clarify, was that question concerning true budget? I think it was. So I will try, because I wasn't involved in the project. I think for true budget, it was rather easy to convince the stakeholders, because KfW together with Bearing Point, they actually developed this platform, and for all the players involved, it was there were only benefits. They had no they didn't have to put resources into it, but they would all benefit, because for the money lenders, it made their processes and their communication efforts much simpler, while it reduced their fiduciary risk. So their treuhänderisches Risiko actually decreased, while at the same time they had less effort. So, I mean, that's the dream scenario, right? If you come to a stakeholder and tell them, I developed something that doesn't cost you, or more or less doesn't cost you anything, but it actually gives you different potentials. But concerning the second use case, our experiment, and banking in general. When you talk to top management about a new software or infrastructure, there are always two questions. One is IT capability. Do we need IT capabilities to develop this, or can it be developed externally? Because for banks that are older than 30 years, IT capability is a big issue. And the other one is always IT and data security, because at the first glance, or when you take a first look at a blockchain, it's from a banking or regulatory perspective, it always looks like you are outsourcing something, you're outsourcing data. And so that's the first first thought that comes up, that you have to explain whether they have a point there or not.
Thank you so much, Tillmann, for this. I have a question for you as well, which shifts the focus away from developing countries to Germany. Well, that may be considered a developing country too in some ways, let's be honest. And I was actually with Bundesblock, part of the Wir versus Virus hackathon when the lockdown started. And we actually proposed a solution which led to some follow-ups with KfW on this idea of actually distributing Corona help measures in Germany to small businesses through a tokenized euro voucher that would have essentially allowed to use market mechanics and market demand to allocate support funds from consumers to businesses. That was the idea. And KfW saw the potential, they found it really interesting, but it was very obvious that this is impossible to roll out, like in this short amount of time. It was like, yeah, you know, we're having these calls to and to reflect on this, but no way this is ever going to happen. At the same time, I had an interview with the digital minister, Audrey Tang of Taiwan recently, and she explained me how they were able within a week or something in Taiwan to allow every Taiwanese to withdraw Corona help measures from any ATM in the country, identified through, I don't know, a QR code or something. And a few other countries were also able to be very quick in this way. Maybe without, yeah, if you're able to, maybe what would need to be in place, or what does the next government have to do in Germany that we become so agile in terms of our IT infrastructure that we could react to crises in the future in such, you know, really dynamic ways, in a sense? What do you think should be in place for this?
That's a perfect question that I'm 100% certain that I cannot answer. I remember your proposition. It was really promising to use blockchain to channel money better. I think your idea was not to, we have this term which is called helicopter money, where you just give out, let's say, like the Taiwanese government did, they paid, well, every citizen gets, I think like in the US, every citizen gets 1,000 euros so they can survive a month without going to work. And your idea was, which we thought was really interesting, was to actually give this money a purpose, so that you can't put it on your bank account and you cannot shop at very large
Amazon,
online businesses, but to actually use it for, I don't know, the barber shop or for small and medium-sized businesses. That's an aspect that we are trying to focus on. So to make promotional loans and subsidies more effective, that they are not being, you know, used to save money, but actually used in a certain amount of time for a special purpose that its purpose actually is. But to, well, you see, I'm trying to not answer your question because it's
This is
very
fine.
difficult question to answer.
It's a very difficult question. Yes.
What has to be done to react so shortly? I think I don't know if any other speaker has a
Yeah, maybe we give it up to the panel.
To the question.
Like, yeah, kind of basic infrastructure. Germany would need to be agile in such ways.
Yeah, but I think it's not just Germany. We had a similar project in Cologne where we basically had a company trying to collect money for local shops and handing out a token for everyone. The problem there is that you have to do with money laundering. If you keep money on your account in place for somebody else, you basically have to be a bank and stuff like this. So there's a lot of regulation around this, which makes it very hard if it's not coming from the government. And I think the difference in Taiwan is that this was basically a very high level Taiwanese governmental decision to support this. Versus your basically hackathon idea, and many others had this idea as well, which is a grassroots thing, and for that to make happen is a lot more complicated.
Yeah. The idea was for the government, of course, to adopt this, but I think we've discussed it. Thank you so much. Actually, sorry, I have some tech problems here. I want to ask Matti, who has been working on the digital school reports. You already mentioned the pipeline, you're working on the student ID. Now, the German government, the new potential government, the coalition agreement is mentioning that maybe the land title registry is going to be digitized as well. And this is a thoroughly federal affair as well. Is there anything you can say from your point of view on such an idea? Is this even feasible from how you see it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean,
modest.
At first glance, I would say yes. Why not? I think we can use that technology also in this context. But maybe 2 steps back. I think everything that's happening in the SSI context is still very, I don't know, unclear. So there's a lot of different efforts going on and parallel streams that are working on different solutions and technology stacks and all that stuff. So and therefore we are quite cautious so far to say we want to have in our context this student ID card as a SSI solution. Yeah, but I think at the end we will end up as in an SSI ecosystem. I think there are like discussions at federal level and also at the government level how to build this kind of identity ecosystem. And then in this context, I think the SSI solutions are quite valuable. And let's see what happens in this context. I don't know.
Thank you so much. Anybody else want to take a guess at the feasibility of the German land title registry? I find it so fascinating, but I was always told it's the last thing we're going to do. It's the most complicated. Just don't start with this. So now it's in the coalition agreement. Any thoughts in the panel on this?
I could jump in. Yes, I would share the same opinion as you just expressed. It's one of the most difficult and complex things. And I guess from a technical point of view, it's not just the land registry. You just write who's the owner of a piece of land. You also have all the securities in it. You have banks who have secure their loans with it. You have many also complex legal checks that you have to make if somebody has to be deleted out of it, if somebody has to be added, if it's old. And we basically have an intermediary here, which is the land registry office, Grundbuchamt. I mean, who has ever been in a German court is like, these are the most serious people maybe in the public administration, is the people doing so there's a kind of running system. And if the question is, what do you want to tokenize here? I mean, you could say every piece of land is in a way tokenized, and then you can enter all the things. And bank also has some possibilities to directly access and get it away from paper. But I think the first step here would be to put like the pieces of the land registry digital at first. It's quite far yet, but I don't see yet the blockchain case in it. And the other question you asked about rolling out the money and giving out to people, it's, I think, really the SSI or the EID question will be very much deciding if there will be at core, let's say, a DLT solution or not. If all these credentials that are in there will be non-traceable, or if there will be some kind of decentralization in it. If you have this wallet, this identity wallet, then you could add all the things on. You could have your certificates from your school. You could save also the money you receive from the government. You can transfer it to some other coins, whatever. I mean, everything is thinkable, but that's the first step. You need to have your identity wallet. It's still in the EIDAS regulation at the moment, but as far as I hear, it's also not sure how much the ledger will stay in or how decentralized the whole thing will be. So from my perspective, a lot of effort should go in making this a real distributed solution, EUID. And for this, we need some civil society and also scientific input, because there's many people who don't have any interest in having a distributed identity system.
Mm-hmm. That was a very informative answer. Thank you so much, Michael. I actually have a question for you that I wanted to ask initially, and I think it's a perfect closing maybe for this panel, which is you mentioned multiple times how blockchain ecosystems are just as complicated and messy as this public administration stuff going on. So maybe you could formulate one lesson that each of them can learn from the other. So maybe to help both actually solve their respective issues.
Well, I think certainly what the blockchain community can learn from the law is that not all solutions or all problem solutions can be formalized in a satisfying way into binary terms. There will be, and this is, I mean, I go back in legal history. There was Friedrich der Große in Germany, who tried to make a law book, which was, he said, the complete law book. He said everything should be in it, everything should be solved, and we get rid of judges. We don't need any courts because the law is so clear. And also the people making this German civil code, BGB, had the same idea. They made like 2,500 paragraphs, and then they thought, now we have solved everything. We don't need any. But there was still a lack. Yeah, you need to be abstract, but you can never be as specific to solve all questions, and you need to have some abstraction to solve problems that you didn't see. And I don't see this often. Like sometimes I see this in the blockchain sphere that people think I can just put everything in the code and solve all social problems around. So there will be someone to decide if this is fair, just, you know, in terms with our law. So we cannot get rid of the people fully. So this is the lesson of the law. And,
and vice versa. Yeah, now I'm excited. What
can
the law learn from the others? Yeah.
Yes, for me, I learned, I mean, it's hard to say because what I learned is that the attempt, for example, if I look at Polkadot, I've written my first paper in this 2016 about the attempt of governing things and using game theory in solving problems is interesting, but also I'm a bit skeptical of solving social problems solely based on game theory. But I think in these governance structures, it's quite interesting to adapt new ways of incentives into structuring society. And I think we can learn also how to, what transparency of decision-making actually means. This is something what I don't like in the law, because in the end, you're always confronted with that judge or that person who gives them only, you know, gives you some language, but never gives you all the reasons what's led to their decision. And so this is something I would like to implement, that also people sitting in the public administration explain in the same way like the documentation in blockchain can do it. Now I've kicked Florian out.
Yes, but I think this was a very good answer for the end of the discussion, because Florian have written me that he has some problems with his with the technique, and because of this, I said thank you very much to all the speakers. Thank you for this very interesting discussion. We are already a bit delayed, so I'm so sorry. I also thank you to all the participants, and yes, a quick note from my side, and that tomorrow at 4:00 p.m. there will be the session Blockchain in Use Sustainability, and there's still the chance to register for this. So thank you very much, and yes, have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.